Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I'll be working on a Pflueger fishing reel. It's a low-profile bait caster. This is the Pflueger Monarch. And well, Pflueger as a company has a long and storied history. It's been a brand, well, for over 100 years, 125 years probably. It was formed by Ernest Pflueger in Akron, Ohio. And well, after the family control of it, they sold it to Shakespeare in the 1950s, and Shakespeare continued to own it, and today the brand is owned by Pure Fishing, which owns both Shakespeare and Pflueger. Well, today we're going to work on the Monarch fishing reel. It's pretty much a low-profile bait casting reel, popular with bass fishing and the like. I do notice as I'm looking at the reel, we have one tight screw, one loose screw, one missing screw. Hopefully we'll be able to find a replacement for that missing screw. But we're going to show you how to take this reel apart completely, how to service it, how to keep it going for a long time to come. Well, looks like everything's working despite the missing screws, so let's get started. First thing I always like to do when I'm working on a fishing reel, particularly a bait caster, is remove the spool and the side plate. This should just flip down, about 1/8 of an inch turn, bring it out. This is a mag controlled fishing reel, so that'll help you prevent some backlashes. I've tested it, the bearings sound fine, so no need to take the bearings out, and you do not do anything with the mag assembly. You don't have to take it apart or do anything like that, unless you know it's very dirty, then you want to clean it up, of course, but this looks just the way it should look. When I remove my pieces and parts, they go into a parts tray. I use a fast food container, and that helps me to keep track of where those things are when it comes time to reinstall. There's a bearing on the spool side here, so we're going to use some fishing reel oil. This is precision reel oil, and check it. If it's not clean, clean it. You can clean it using a kitchen scrubby and some fishing reel cleaner. In this case I use Penn's rod and reel cleaner. And when you're satisfied that it's nice and clean, just go ahead and put that in there as well. The reason that I do remove that spool first is that a lot of manufacturers will put a case screw underneath that spool. And in this situation right here, we have a screw right there that's holding that case on. So you won't be able to get the case off by just removing those 3 exterior screws. You're going to have to remove this one from the back side as well. Okay. When I take my screws off, I always like to check, make sure that they're all the same. And if there's a different one, I like to note where that different one belongs, so when it's time to reinstall, you put it in the right place. Well, if you like these types of videos, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you do subscribe to the channel, use that notification button. That will let you know when I post. And well, you'll see if it's a video that you like. I've recently been doing kind of episodic type things. One day I'll be doing a fishing reel repair. The next day I might be answering questions and answers. The next day it might be something on the industry. And well, you never know quite what I'm going to do, so it's always good to watch them all. But if you have a particular focus on one, like reel repair, you'll generally see those every other day. All right, just crack the nut on the handle, and then I'm going to just walk that off manually. This is a good place to tell you to take pictures. Those pictures will be invaluable later on if you get stuck on the reassembly. When I take the pieces and parts off, generally I like to clean them right then. That saves me a trip a little bit later. Also, I like to lubricate them, so we're going to just use that oil port here on each side of the handle. Throw a little bit of oil in there, spin it around, and let that sit while we continue to work on the reel. I'm removing these pieces because these pieces need to be taken off before you can take the side plate off. There's a little tension washer that goes on top of the star adjuster. Then the star adjuster comes off. Underneath the star adjuster there's a series of tension rings. There's usually 3 or 4. This has 4 in it. I like to put those right in the cup so I don't lose those. One more in there. And those are, they've got a bend to them. They're beveled or bowed or whatever the right term for that is. And just pay attention to that so that you know that later. I'm thinking somebody lost 2 screws in this case because that one doesn't look like it belongs there. It's got a rough thread to it instead of a refined thread or a machine thread. I think somebody just jammed that in there. I'm going to put that aside. Looks like I'm going to be looking for 2 screws, not 1. And we'll take that last screw out here. Yeah, this has got to find, no, this has got the same screw to it. All right, well, at least I know what I'm looking for. All right, so the screw in the back, 3 screws in the front. We should be able to lift the case off now. Again, take a picture. This is a pretty common setup for these types of fishing reels. So note that you have a yoke that has 2 springs on it, a pinion gear, a main gear, and a trip device that's going to bring it down and intersect with a trip lever underneath the main gear that will fire that and set that back into collect mode from free spool. I'll take the 2 of those off so that we don't lose them. We should be able to pull up and out. I just wanted to check here. We have an instant anti-reverse in this one. Sometimes if you don't, you're going to have an assembly underneath here that is going to have to do with the traditional AR finger dog. Okay, the main gear is out. The yoke and the pinion gear are off. And now what I like to do is, you don't need to take this trip assembly off unless you're having trouble with it. But I like to spray that down with a penetrating oil and work it in and out. Just like that, to let you know that it's working fine. All right, underneath this, there may be a bearing, so we're going to remove this shaft. And this shaft drives the line guide. So this is one of those reels, when you're casting, the line guide is going to stay stationary. And when it stays stationary, make sure before you go to cast the reel that the line guide is centered so that the line travels equidistant. Well, we don't have a bearing in there, we have a bushing. As long as I have it off, I'm going to put a little bit of grease in there just to help that bottom of the shaft kind of ride free and easy. I'm going to bring this around, reset this. Once you reset this, go for the 2 screws. If you have trouble, if you're dropping that screw, use a little bit of the fishing reel grease. Kind of hold it as you go for the attaching. Side 1, here's side 2. And you wanted to make sure that when you set that you kept it the right way. This is the right orientation. It kind of acts as a clamp to let that go down and holds that thing when it's moving. It's a guide. All right, here's your click. We'll show you how the click works. This is your click lever. That's the orientation for your click lever. So what happens is you're going to be bringing your free spool release down. It's going to intersect into that little tooth there, and when you turn the shaft, it's going to kick it back up, just like that. Okay, there's washer, and we have 1 washer that's pretty stuck, so I would say this has been a fairly ineffective drag here. There we go, it's been stuck. But it's a plastic washer. It doesn't require any greases or oils. So all I'm going to do is just a light buff here. There's probably some dried grease on it. I'm going to free that up. Okay, Inspect the inside of the main gear, make sure that's clean. Bring the drag washer back on, and before you assemble, you can take a bristle brush, pull through on the teeth. Now there's no oils or greases in this reel at all, so nothing has stayed one way or another. It's all evaporated or dried out. We're going to refresh the grease, use fishing reel grease for that. And I'm just going to set that aside for a moment because I would like to put the pinion gear in next. Notice that on the pinion gear, one side has a slot, the other has the traditional teeth. The teeth mesh with the main gear, the slot meshes with the spool. That means that the slot for the spool faces inward. On the carrier, you're going to notice that there is a ring. Okay, I needed to take a short break after I put the pinion gear and the main gear on. So now what we have to do is we have to service the line guide and pawl before we can finish installing the rest of the reel. There's 3 screws that are holding this bezel on. Very small screws. Pay particular attention to them. That's where this paper towel on the desk helps. They can get lost very easily. And with those 3, we should be able to pull this off now. Off and out. That gives us access to your line guide. This is a plastic cap. Be very careful with that. And then if you tap down, you should be able to get the pawl out. Inspect the pawl. This has a little bit of dirt on the collars, so make sure that you clean those up. Make sure that it's nice and clean. Inspect the worm gear. If you find that the worm gear is dirty, then grab a paper towel. We're just going to take that off for now. Grab a paper towel. Press it onto the worm gear, turn the drive, and that will collect the dirt and debris from the gear. If you need to really remove it, there's C-clips here that you can remove to take that worm drive off. Most of the time you don't need to do that. A little bit of a drop of oil. Reset the pawl, turn it to pull that pawl in. Then you're going to find a small washer that goes on top of the pawl. Then we can put that cap back on. Hand tighten it to the best that you can. That way you know that you've got it seating properly without cross stripping. And then just a quarter of a turn to firm that up to get that done. Let's go back to that bezel then, reset the bezel. Bring that in, grab your 3 screws. And just finish up with that 3rd one. And then we'll be able to put most of this back together now. Okay, so before we were so rudely interrupted by my lack of servicing the pinion gear and assembly, we remembered that we had to do the line guide. Pinion gear is in and greased and cleaned. Main gear we've cleaned and greased. Bring that whole assembly over. Click ratchet, bottom washer, main gear, main washer, spacer for your anti-reverse. Bring our case over now. Oops, another oops. We want to install the 2 yoke springs before we bring that over. One on each side. Now the case. When you bring that case over, make sure you have a nice firm seal all the way around. There's one more piece that goes on that. That's this top bearing shim. And while I took that short break there, I went trying to find a matching screw for the missing one. I think I did pretty good. The head size might be a little bit different, but it looks like the thread size is exact. The machine screw goes into the back here to hold the side plate on. And once that's tightened, we can work the original screws. Those are here on the top. Because the other one's an oddball, I'm going to put it on the bottom where it wouldn't necessarily be seen, but I think the head's going to match up. I think we'll be all right. I have a box of screws from reels that, well, I either purchased them as parts reels or they became parts reels because they broke somewhere along the line. And if there's nothing left to the reel, I do remove the screws and put them into a handy container, and generally speaking, I can have a place to find them. All right, this is the one that may or may not be the exact fit. You know what? It's going in as an exact fit. Wonderful. There you go. All right. I think we got one more turn there. Yeah, you can't even tell the difference on the heads. They're all the same. Very good. Got lucky. Found a good match. All right. We have the 4 washers come next. The 2 beveled ones were on the bottom. So I put the first one with the curve going up, the second one with the curve going down. Pretty sure somewhere along the line I oiled that bearing. If I didn't, I'm going to do that right now. 2 flat washers. And we can put the star adjuster on. Spin this as much by hand as you can. That way you can ensure yourself that you haven't cross-stripped it. And there's a tension washer that goes on top of that star adjuster. Then the handle goes on. And the handle nut goes on. Again, same idea here. Put this on as much as you can by hand. That way you're sure that you're not cross-stripping. I just had a quantum reel come in that had the cross-stripped handle nut, and there's nothing more frustrating than have to go replace the shaft and the nut because somebody was a little more careless about how they put it on. All right, cap cover comes on. Grease the spool shaft. Put a little bit of grease on the back end. We've oiled the bearing on the spool. We can bring that whole assembly in now. Seat it tight. We've already oiled the bearing on the back side here. Bring it in, press it down, turn it up, lock it in. All right. What have we done? We've taken this reel completely apart, showed you how it made, gave you a little bit of history about Ernest Pflueger and his Pflueger Reel Company. We made sure that all of the dried pieces were cleaned, re-lubed, re-oiled, and well, set about ready to go fishing again. We clean the pawl. We showed you how to do that. I showed you how the free spool release works. And well, we're ready for a test. Let's put in the free spool first. All right, we've greased, so this is probably a little tight. No, it's a very tight. Wow. Wow. I don't have the hand strength to do that one. I'm going to have to gently use a little pliers to turn that. Back it off a little bit. This is all based on the weight of the lures that you're using. That's better. You can see how it spins nice now. You can even back it off more if you really want it to spin. It's the beauty of those spool bearings. All right, we showed you how this trip mechanism works. When we turn the handle, this should pop back up. It does. We showed you how the drag was set. Let's tighten that down. Give it a spin. Your pawl is working. Check your drag. It's holding nice and tight. And what I recommend doing after you've tested and after every fishing trip, back that star adjuster off. That'll act as a clamp. If you don't, it's going to press that drag washer into the main gear. You're going to see what we saw before when we took it off, which is the drag sticks to the one and becomes less effective or efficient. Well, that's it. That's your Pflueger Monarch reel. I want to take a moment to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, rescue, EMT, everybody involved in keeping us out of harm's way. And I appreciate your dedication to task and your career choice. I want to thank everybody who's been watching. I do appreciate your viewership. I appreciate your comments, your subscriptions, and keeping this channel viable and vibrant. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.